There is a category of obstruction in human experience that prayer cannot reach. Not because prayer is weak, but because prayer in its conventional form operates at the level of appeal. It addresses a higher authority and requests an intervention. Ernest Holmes identified with the precision of a metaphysical engineer that certain obstructions in consciousness are not installed at the level where appeals are processed. They are installed at the level of identity, the deep structural layer where the mind holds its foundational beliefs about what is true, what is deserved, and what is permanently real. At that level, prayer produces sincerity without result. Forgiveness, correctly understood, is not a spiritual virtue. It is the specific operative equation that dissolves obstruction at precisely the depth where prayer cannot reach. Not the forgiveness of sentiment, not the forgiveness of religious obligation, the forgiveness of mechanism, the precise internal operation that removes the structural block at its point of installation and allows the law to move freely through the consciousness it was obstructing. You have prayed about this. You have affirmed around it. You have visualized past it. You have applied every technique available at the level of conscious mental work. And the obstruction persists, not with weakness, not with signs of yielding, with a stability that no amount of spiritual effort has been able to explain, let alone dissolve. The prayer was genuine. The discipline was real. The faith was not performance. It was earned over years, sometimes over decades of serious practice. And still, in this one area, this specific domain of experience, nothing moves. That immovability is not evidence of spiritual failure. It is diagnostic information. It is the precise symptom that identifies the nature of the block and its location in the architecture of your consciousness. Holmes reveals why, with surgical clarity. The obstruction is not at the level where your techniques have been working. It is deeper, it is structural. Your prayers have been delivered to the correct address. The universal mind is not deaf, not absent, not withholding. The source is fully operational. The supply is fully present. But between the source and the specific area of your experience, where you most need the supply to arrive, there is an insulator, a crystallized charge of unforgiveness installed at the structural level of the deep mind. And that insulator has been interrupting the circuit with complete consistency every time the current attempted to flow through it. You have been increasing the pressure at the source while the block downstream remained untouched. The result is exactly what you have experienced. Power everywhere the channel is clear, and immovable limitation precisely where the channel is blocked. The only tool that operates at that depth is the forgiveness equation, not as an act of emotional generosity toward another person, but as the precise internal operation that dissolves the crystallized resentment, the hardened judgment, the calcified unforgiveness that has been blocking the flow of the law at the level of identity itself. This is the teaching Holmes embedded in the science of mind with the certainty of a man who had observed the mechanism operating with absolute consistency across thousands of individual cases. Apply the equation and the obstruction dissolves, not gradually, completely, because you are not improving a weak circuit. You are removing the insulator that has been interrupting a fully powered one. In this video, we will establish Holmes's complete teaching on forgiveness as an operative equation, the precise mechanical sequence that removes structural obstruction from the deep mind at the exact depth where it was installed. And we will construct the protocol that allows the practitioner to apply this equation to any persistent obstruction in their experience, regardless of its apparent external cause or historical duration. This is not an exploration of forgiveness as a spiritual ideal. We will not be examining its moral dimensions or its theological history. We will be moving with the deliberate precision of a systems engineer examining a circuit, identifying the point of obstruction, naming the insulator, and applying the specific equation that removes it. We will move from forgiveness as a spiritual concept into forgiveness as a precision instrument. We will build this in layers. The foundation will establish the exact mechanism by which unforgiveness produces structural obstruction in the deep mind, not as metaphor, but as the operative description of a specific internal event. The architecture will provide the complete application protocol, the identification of the obstruction, the execution of the equation, and the confirmation of the cleared channel. And the refinement will confront directly the specific forms of incomplete forgiveness that perform the equation without completing it, leaving the structural charge intact beneath the appearance of release. There is one form of forgiveness in that section, identified by Holmes as the most neglected and simultaneously the most obstructive of all, that the sincere practitioner has almost certainly never fully applied, not because they refused it, but because they were never clearly told it was the specific operation required, and whose omission is responsible for more persistent metaphysical failure than any other single factor in serious practice. We will name it exactly in Part 4. If this law is now yours, if you have recognized in it the precise description of an obstruction you have been carrying without a name, then make that recognition operative. Remain in this laboratory. What follows in this channel is not content. It is a curriculum of precision that builds on itself. To leave and return only by chance is to apply the law of accident to your own initiation. And there is one action available to you right now that is not symbolic. It is operative. Write the words. The equation is applied in the comments below, not as a reply to another comment, not as a reaction to what you have heard so far, as a decree, as the first formal declaration that the dissolving operation has begun, issued by you about your own consciousness before the full instruction has even been delivered. The law responds to declaration. The deep mind registers commitment as a structural event. Begin now. Ernest Holmes taught that the universal mind operates through consciousness, the way electrical current operates through a conducting circuit. The source is infinite, consistent, and entirely impersonal. It does not prefer one practitioner over another, does not reward patients with surplus supply, does not withhold from those who have not earned its favor. It flows. That is its entire nature, to flow through every channel that is open to receive it and to produce in the specific area of experience corresponding to each channel the precise conditions that the channel's pattern calls forth. This is not philosophy. This is the foundational, mechanical description of how the law of mind operates, and Holmes stated it with the unambiguous clarity of a physicist describing gravity. The law is impersonal, consistent, and responsive only to the state of the consciousness through which it is attempting to operate. The critical implication of this model, and the implication that the sincere practitioner most frequently misses, is that the quality of the source is never the variable. The source is constant. The only variable in the system is the state of the channel. A consciousness that is fully open, fully unobstructed, fully clear in a specific area of experience will receive the full creative expression of the universal mind in that area with the same inevitability that a fully open pipe receives the full pressure of the water flowing through it. And a consciousness that is obstructed in a specific area will receive nothing in that area regardless of the quality or quantity of spiritual work directed at the source. Because the work at the source cannot compensate for an obstruction in the channel. This is not a discouraging conclusion. It is a liberating one. Because if the variable is the channel and not the source, then the practitioner has complete and direct access to the operative factor. The obstruction is in their own consciousness, and their consciousness is precisely what they have the authority to change. Holmes identified unforgiveness as the most common, most persistent, and most structurally damaging form of channel obstruction available to human consciousness. He was careful to specify what he meant by this, and the specification is critical because it moves the entire discussion out of the domain of emotional processing and into the domain of structural mechanics. Unforgiveness, in Holmes's technical usage, is not primarily an emotional state. It is not the feeling of anger or hurt or betrayal. Those are symptoms. Unforgiveness is the crystallized judgment that consciousness holds in the deep mind, the subjective mind, the subconscious soil, about a person, a circumstance, an institution, or a version of itself. The judgment is the structural element. The emotions are its surface expression, and it is the judgment, not the emotion, that installs the insulating block in the channel. The mechanism of installation is precise. When a significant harm, betrayal, or violation occurs, or when consciousness perceives that such an event has occurred, the mind forms a judgment about the source of that harm. This is a natural and, in many ways, a functional response. The judgment serves in the short term as a boundary-setting mechanism. It categorizes the source of harm as something to be protected against. But when that judgment is not dissolved, when it is carried forward in consciousness, rehearsed, reinforced by subsequent events, and ultimately installed as a permanent feature of the mind's structural architecture, it crystallizes. It moves from a temporary response to a permanent element of the deep mind's landscape. And it does not merely occupy neutral space in that landscape. It occupies the specific channel that corresponds to the area of experience it was formed around. And it blocks that channel with the same completeness and consistency that a physical insulator blocks an electrical current. The correspondence between the charge and the channel is not approximate, it is precise. A judgment crystallized around financial betrayal, a parent who failed to provide, a partner who stole, a system that excluded, occupies, and obstructs the specific channel through which the universal mind's abundance must flow to reach the practitioner's financial experience. A judgment crystallized around betrayal in relationship, a partner who abandoned, a friend who violated trust, a family that withheld love, occupies and obstructs the specific channel through which the law's capacity for connection and intimacy must flow. The practitioner may experience clear, demonstrable flow of the law in every other area of their experience, proving conclusively that their practice is sound, their faith is real, and the source is fully operational, while experiencing complete, inexplicable blockage in the single area that corresponds to the crystallized charge. This is not a coincidence. It is the precise expression of a law operating with mathematical consistency. Holmes was unambiguous about the implications of this correspondence. He stated, in terms that admit no softening, that the practitioner who has not identified and dissolved the unforgiven charges in their consciousness is not working with the full power of the law. Regardless of the sophistication of their practice, the sincerity of their faith, or the duration of their commitment, the law does not reward effort. It responds to openness. And a channel that is obstructed by a crystallized judgment is not open, regardless of the quality of the work being performed upstream from the obstruction. The equation must be applied. The insulator must be removed, not because the source will then consent to flow. It has been attempting to flow all along, but because the channel will then be structurally capable of receiving what the source has never stopped attempting to deliver. Holmes further specified that the crystallization is maintained not by the original event, but by the ongoing judgment. This is the mechanically critical point that separates a temporary emotional response from a permanent structural obstruction. The original harm may have occurred decades ago. The person who caused it may be dead. The circumstance that produced it may have been resolved by external events long since. But if the judgment formed at the moment of that harm has been carried forward in consciousness, rehearsed in private moments, reactivated by subsequent disappointments, quietly confirmed by years of accumulated evidence, then the crystallization is not historical. It is present. It is being maintained actively by the mind's habitual return to the condemning charge. The insulator is not a relic of the past. It is a live structural element in the current architecture of the deep mind, and it is blocking the channel right now in this moment with the same completeness it has maintained since the moment it was first installed. This understanding transforms the entire approach to the problem of persistent limitation. The practitioner who has been puzzled by the immovability of a specific obstruction in their experience, who has applied sophisticated, sustained metaphysical work to an area that refuses to respond, now has a precise diagnostic framework. The question is no longer, why is the law not working? The law is working exactly as it always works, completely, consistently, impersonally. The question is, what judgment held in my deep mind has crystallized in the specific channel that corresponds to this area of limitation and is maintaining the obstruction that the source cannot penetrate? That question has a specific answer, and the answer has a specific operative response. The forgiveness equation is not a spiritual gesture in the direction of that answer. It is the answer itself, applied at the exact depth and location where the obstruction was installed. The geometry of Holmes's teaching here is worth pausing to appreciate in its full mechanical elegance. Every other metaphysical technique, affirmation, prayer, visualization, decree, spiritual mind treatment, operates at the level of the objective mind and projects its pattern into the subjective mind through the channel of consciousness. The effectiveness of every one of these techniques depends entirely on the openness of the channel through which the pattern must travel to reach the deep mind. A clear channel transmits the pattern completely, An obstructed channel transmits it partially or not at all, depending on the density of the obstruction. This means that the forgiveness equation is not one technique among many. It is the prerequisite condition for every other technique's complete effectiveness. It does not add power to the practitioner's practice. It removes the obstruction that has been preventing the practice's full power from reaching its intended destination. This is the specific sense in which Holmes's teaching represents a different order of precision from the general instruction to pray more, affirm more consistently, or strengthen one's faith. It follows directly from this that the duration of a persistent limitation is not evidence of its permanence. Duration is evidence of the consistency with which the charge has been maintained, nothing more. A crystallization that has been in place for 20 years has not become 20 years more difficult to dissolve. It has been maintained for 20 years by a consistent internal habit of judgment, and the dissolution of that habit through the correct application of the forgiveness equation dissolves the crystallizations regardless of its age. Holmes was categorical on this point. The law is not bound by time. The subjective mind does not calculate the longevity of an obstruction and require proportional effort to remove it. The equation is applied to a present tense structural element in the present tense architecture of consciousness, and it dissolves that element with the completeness and immediacy of a solvent applied to the precise material it was formulated to dissolve. The implication for the practitioner who has carried a specific limitation for years, for decades in some cases, is not discouraging. It is liberating. The years of obstruction were not wasted years in the sense of being irreversible damage. They were years during which the source was pressing its full creative power against the channel with consistent faithfulness, while the channel remained blocked. The moment the obstruction is dissolved, the supply rushes through, not gradually as though recovering from depletion, with the full force of a source that has never been depleted, that has been fully operational and fully available throughout the entire duration of the obstruction. The practitioner does not need to rebuild the supply. They need only remove the insulator that has been preventing its delivery. Holmes grounded this teaching in what he described as the foundational principle of the science of mind, that the subjective mind is completely neutral and completely responsive to the dominant patterns that consciousness impresses upon it. It has no capacity to evaluate the wisdom, the justice, or the desirability of the patterns it receives. It receives and reproduces with equal faithfulness a pattern of abundance and a pattern of limitation, a pattern of health and a pattern of disease, a pattern of openness and a pattern of obstruction. The crystallized judgment of unforgiveness is a pattern, a specific, precise, consistently maintained pattern that the subjective mind has been reproducing faithfully in the corresponding area of external experience. It is not a malfunction of the law. It is the law operating exactly as it always operates, with complete consistency and complete impersonality. In response to the dominant pattern it has been receiving, the equation changes the pattern immediately, completely, with mathematical certainty. The final element of this foundational understanding that Holmes insisted upon with particular force is the complete irrelevance of the external circumstances surrounding the unforgiven charge. It does not matter whether the harm was real or perceived. It does not matter whether the person who caused it was acting with malice or ignorance. It does not matter whether the judgment is, by any objective standard, completely justified. The question of whether the judgment is warranted is a moral and philosophical question, and it is entirely separate from the mechanical question of whether the crystallization is blocking the channel. A completely justified judgment is just as effective an insulator as an unjustified one. The law is impersonal. It does not evaluate the justice of the charge. It only responds to the state of the channel. This is not a moral statement. It is a mechanical one. The equation is applied not because the person who caused the harm deserves to be released from judgment, but because the channel must be cleared for the practitioner's own liberation. The mechanism is entirely self-referential. It operates on your consciousness for your liberation, regardless of the moral status of anyone else involved. Holmes synthesized all of this into a teaching that, at its core, is almost brutally simple in its mechanical logic. The law flows freely through an unobstructed consciousness. Unforgiveness obstructs the consciousness in direct correspondence to the area of experience around which the unforgiven charge was formed. The forgiveness equation dissolves the obstruction at its point of installation. Therefore, for any area of persistent limitation, any domain of experience where the practitioner has applied sustained, sincere, sophisticated, metaphysical work without producing the expected result, the operative question is not how to pray more effectively in that area, but what unforgiven charge is blocking the channel in that area, and how to apply the equation to dissolve it. This is the architectural logic of the entire teaching. Every subsequent element of what follows in this video is the elaboration of this single, precise, mechanically complete principle. Consider a garden hose attached to a fully pressurized source. The source is constant. The pressure behind it does not fluctuate, does not diminish with use, does not require replenishment. It is simply, continuously, fully available. Now introduce a single kink in the hose at one specific point in its length. Water flows freely through every section of the hose before the kink and, if it flows at all, past the kink, in diminished, unpredictable amounts through every section after it. The gardener who observes that certain areas of the garden are receiving insufficient water has two available responses. The first is to increase the pressure at the source, to open the tap further, to add a pump, to press more water into a system that is already fully pressurized. The second is to locate the kink and remove it. Holmes taught without ambiguity that the overwhelming majority of sincere spiritual practitioners have been applying the first response to a problem that requires exclusively the second. The source does not need more pressure. The hose needs to be unkept. This analogy is not decorative. It is the precise structural description of what occurs in a consciousness carrying an unforgiven charge. The universal mind is the source, infinite, impersonal, fully pressurized at every moment. The channels of consciousness are the hose, and the unforgiven charge, crystallized in the deep mind at the point corresponding to a specific area of experience, is the kink. What makes the analogy mechanically exact, and what makes Holmes's teaching so clinically precise, is the correspondence between the location of the kink and the area of the garden that receives insufficient supply. The kink does not reduce the pressure equally across the entire hose. It reduces the flow specifically and exclusively in the section downstream from its location. This is why the practitioner experiencing persistent limitation in one specific area while experiencing clear, demonstrable flow of the law in every other area is not exhibiting inconsistency. They are exhibiting the precise symptom of a localized obstruction, a kink in a specific section of a hose that is otherwise fully functional. The futility of increasing pressure to solve a kink is not merely that it fails to remove the kink. It is that it actively misleads the diagnostician. When the pressure is increased behind an existing kink, the sections of the hose upstream from the kink receive more water, noticeably, demonstrably more. The practitioner who increases their spiritual effort in response to a persistent limitation in one area will typically observe an increase in positive results in every other area of their experience, because every other channel being unobstructed transmits the increased effort with increased yield. This looks like confirmation that the approach is working. It is actually confirmation that the kink exists. The area of the hose that is kinked receives no additional water regardless of how much additional pressure is applied upstream. The area of the garden corresponding to that section of hose remains unwatered, and the practitioner, observing improvement everywhere else alongside continued limitation in one specific area, concludes that the specific limitation must be particularly difficult, requiring even more effort, even more sustained practice, even more spiritual pressure, when the correct conclusion is that a kink exists in that specific location and has not yet been addressed. Holmes observed this pattern with the diagnostic precision of a clinician who had seen the same case present in thousands of different external forms. The financial practitioner who produces clear results in relationships and health, but cannot move their finances. The health practitioner who demonstrates the law beautifully in every other domain, but cannot heal a specific chronic condition. The relationship practitioner whose professional and financial life has responded magnificently to their practice, but who cannot produce a sustained, fulfilling partnership. In every case, the question Holmes asked was not about the quality of their spiritual technique. It was about the specific unforgiven charge corresponding to the specific kinked area. Because in every case, the kink, not the technique, not the faith, not the consistency of practice, was the operative variable. Remove the kink and the supply flows, not because more supply has been generated, because the supply that was always present now has an unobstructed channel through which to reach its destination. The logical consequence of this framework is a complete reorientation of the practitioner's diagnostic approach to persistent limitation. When a specific area of experience remains obstructed, despite sustained metaphysical work, the correct first question is not a question about spiritual technique. It is a question about structural obstruction. Where is the kink? What unforgiven charge, installed at what specific point in the deep mind, corresponds to the area where the law is not flowing? This reorientation is not a minor adjustment in emphasis. It is a fundamental shift in the practitioner's understanding of where the operative variable lives, and therefore where the operative intervention must be applied. The technique is not the variable. The openness of the channel is the variable, and openness is achieved not by improving the technique, but by removing the obstruction that the technique, however excellent, cannot dissolve from the downstream position at which it operates. Holmes extended the garden hose logic into its most demanding implication with complete directness. The practitioner who has been practicing with genuine skill and genuine faith and genuine discipline, and who is experiencing persistent limitation in a specific area, is not failing to practice correctly. They are succeeding at practicing correctly in a system that has a structural obstruction the practice cannot reach. This is a precise and important distinction. It means that the persistent limitation is not evidence of insufficient faith. It is not evidence of insufficient technique. It is not a judgment on the quality or sincerity of the practitioner's spiritual life. It is evidence of a kink, a specific, identifiable, dissolvable insulator installed at a specific point in the channel that has been consistently preventing the supply from reaching the kinked area regardless of the quality of the work being performed upstream. The practitioner deserves to know this, because a practitioner who believes the limitation is due to insufficient faith will work harder at an approach that cannot solve the problem, accumulating years of sincere effort that produces results everywhere except the one area that most needs them. And a practitioner who understands that the limitation is due to a specific structural obstruction can apply the specific equation that dissolves it and receive immediately and completely what the law has been attempting to deliver throughout the entire period of obstruction. The irreversibility of this logical argument is worth stating plainly, because it is the source of the teaching's power. If the universal mind is infinite and impersonal, and Holmes stated this as the foundational axiom of the science of mind, then the source is never the limiting factor. The source cannot be the limiting factor. An infinite source does not run short. An impersonal source does not withhold. Therefore, if limitation exists in a practitioner's experience, the limiting factor must be in the channel, in the practitioner's own consciousness. And if the channel is examined and no obvious obstruction is found at the level of conscious belief, yet the limitation persists, then the obstruction is at a deeper level. This logical sequence leads, with complete inevitability, to the deep mind, to the subjective layer where crystallized judgments, unforgiven charges, and calcified resentments operate below the reach of conscious affirmation and above surface prayer. The practitioner who follows this logic honestly arrives at the forgiveness equation not as a peripheral spiritual practice, but as the most mechanically precise intervention available to them. The completeness of the supply metaphor also addresses what might seem like an uncomfortable implication of the teaching. If the channel has been blocked for years, what has happened to all the supply that was pressing against it from the source side? Has it dissipated? Has it been redirected? Holmes's answer is mechanically unambiguous. Nothing has happened to the supply. The source is not a reservoir that empties when its output is blocked. It is a continuous, self-replenishing field. The universal mind is not diminished by its own consistency. The supply that was pressing against the obstruction 5 years ago is pressing against it right now, with the same force and the same completeness. When the obstruction is dissolved, the practitioner does not receive a diminished stream that has been waiting and weakening behind the block. They receive the full, immediate, complete flow of a source that has never been reduced. This is not a consoling metaphor. It is the mechanically precise description of what Holmes taught occurs when the forgiveness equation is correctly applied to a crystallized obstruction in the deep mind. The kink analogy reaches its final, most precise implication in Holmes's teaching about the relationship between the clarity of the channel and the speed of the result. In a fully unobstructed hose, the water reaches its destination at the speed determined by the pressure of the source, immediately, with no lag between the pressure's application and the water's arrival. In a kinked hose, no amount of pressure increase can accelerate the delivery to the kinked area, because the obstruction is not a matter of insufficient pressure, but of an interrupted path. This corresponds exactly to what the practitioner experiences when the forgiveness equation is correctly applied to a long-standing crystallized charge. The results that follow do not appear gradually, as though the law were slowly regaining momentum in a previously blocked area. They appear with the immediacy of a fully pressurized source flowing through a channel that was, until the moment of the equation's application, blocked, and is now, at that precise moment, fully open. The speed is not a function of spiritual worthiness or accumulated merit. It is a function of channel openness. Clear the channel completely, and the supply arrives completely, at the full speed of the source. The unshakable logic of this teaching rests, finally, on its complete self-consistency. The law of mind operates through consciousness. Consciousness can be open or obstructed in any specific area. Unforgiveness is the most common and most structurally damaging form of obstruction. The forgiveness equation dissolves the obstruction at its precise point of installation. Therefore, the practitioner who applies the equation to every area of persistent limitation in their experience, systematically, precisely, without the reservations that convert forgiveness into performance, is not supplementing their metaphysical practice. They are clearing the system through which their entire practice operates. Every other technique they apply subsequently will operate in a cleared channel and will produce results that their previous experience of the same technique, applied through an obstructed channel, gave them no basis to anticipate. This is the complete mechanical logic of the forgiveness equation. It is not an argument. It is a demonstration of what was already true about the architecture of the law. Holmes did not invent this mechanism. He described it with the precision of a man who had observed it operating with absolute consistency across enough cases to call it, without hesitation or qualification, a law. Holmes was fond of pointing out that the practitioner's greatest misconception about persistent limitation is the assumption that more is required of them: more faith, more effort, more technique, more devotion to the practice. In nearly every case of genuine persistence combined with genuine stagnation in a specific area, what is actually required is less, or more precisely, a removal. The removal of the specific element that has been obstructing the channel. This is not a passive teaching. It requires the practitioner to perform a precise, honest, and often uncomfortable internal examination, to look directly at the judgments they have been maintaining, to name them with the specificity that the equation requires, and to release them with the completeness that the mechanism demands. But it is not more. it is a removal. And a consciousness from which a structural obstruction has been removed is not a consciousness that has been depleted by the effort of removal. It is a consciousness that has been cleared, and that stands for the first time in the duration of the obstruction in full, unimpeded relationship with the infinite source that has been pressing its complete creative power against the channel from the other side throughout the entire period of the block. Holmes returned again and again in his recorded lectures and written works to a single formulation that captures the entire logic of this teaching in its most concentrated form. The law is always for us. It can only work through us, and it can only work through us to the degree that we have cleared the channels of our own consciousness for its passage. This is not an encouragement, it is a schematic. The law is for you, completely, consistently, impersonally, without condition or reservation. The only question is the degree to which your consciousness is clear for its passage. In the areas where it is clear, you have experienced its results with whatever completeness corresponds to the degree of clarity. In the areas where it is obstructed, you have experienced the precise limitation that corresponds to the degree of obstruction. The map of your results is the map of your channel's openness. Read it diagnostically. Find the kink, apply the equation, and receive in full what has been available to you since the beginning. What follows from this is not speculation. It is the direct mechanical application of a principle whose logic has just been established with the completeness of a mathematical proof. The source is infinite and constant. The channel is the variable. Unforgiveness is the most common form of channel obstruction. The forgiveness equation dissolves the obstruction at its point of installation. Therefore, for any area of persistent limitation in your experience, the forgiveness equation is the specific, operative, precision intervention required, and no amount of additional pressure at the source will substitute for it. This is the foundation. Everything that follows is its application. Before the forgiveness equation can be applied, the practitioner must perform a diagnostic operation that Holmes considered as important as the equation itself, and that the majority of sincere practitioners skip entirely, applying the equation in a generalized rather than a targeted way and wondering why the results are incomplete. The operation is the precise identification of the obstruction's location, the specific unforgiven charge that corresponds to the specific persistent limitation being addressed. This is not a broad inventory of every resentment in a person's life. It is a targeted, structural diagnosis aimed at one specific question, and the precision of the question determines the precision of the result. Holmes was unambiguous about the nature of this diagnostic question. The question is not, "Who have I not forgiven?" That question produces a broad survey of relational history. And while such a survey has its uses in a general clearing practice, it does not reliably identify the specific charge that corresponds to a specific persistent limitation. The operative diagnostic question is far more precise. In the exact domain of experience where the persistent limitation lives, in the specific area where the law has not been flowing despite sustained sincere application of metaphysical principles, what judgment, resentment, condemnation, or unforgiven charge is installed in the deep mind at the structural level, the domain first, the charge second, not the reverse. because the correspondence between the charge and the blocked channel is the diagnostic signal, and the practitioner who does not begin with the blocked channel will not reliably locate the charge that is blocking it. The process of locating the obstruction begins with what Holmes called the backward trace, a deliberate, unhurried movement of consciousness backward through the history of the persistent limitation, not through its external events, but through its internal charge. You begin with the present limitation, the specific area of experience where the law is not flowing. You hold that limitation in mind not as an emotional subject, but as a diagnostic object, with the detached clinical attention of a structural engineer examining a blueprint for the point of failure. Then you ask, what is the earliest moment in my experience where I encountered this specific form of limitation, or its exact emotional equivalent? What specific event, relationship, or circumstance produced, for the first time, the core feeling of being blocked, excluded, betrayed, or denied in precisely this area? That earliest encounter is frequently, though not always, the point of installation of the crystallized charge. Holmes taught that the point of installation is frequently not the most dramatic event in the limitation's history. It is the first event, or the event that produced the deepest identification with the limiting pattern. The mind does not crystallize around drama alone. It crystallizes around the moment of deepest personal identification with a specific judgment. The moment when the judgment about a person, a circumstance, or a version of oneself moved from a temporary assessment to a permanent belief about what is true, what is deserved, and what is permanently real. That moment of permanent installation is the location the practitioner is seeking, not the most painful moment in the story. The moment when the judgment became structural, when it moved from the surface of emotional experience into the deep architecture of the subjective mind and took up residence there as a belief rather than a feeling. The distinction between an emotional response and a structural belief is critical to the locating process, and Holmes returned to it with the emphasis of a teacher who knew it was the distinction most frequently missed. An emotional response to a harm or betrayal is a temporary state. It rises, moves through consciousness, and in a healthy system, passes. A structural belief is different. It is the judgment that was formed in response to the emotional event and then maintained in consciousness, past the event's natural resolution, maintained by rehearsal, by confirmation through subsequent events, by the deep mind's tendency to seek evidence consistent with its established patterns. The practitioner performing the backward trace is not looking for the memory that produces the strongest emotional response when revisited. They are looking for the judgment that, when identified and examined, reveals itself to be currently active in the deep mind, present tense, operative, and continuously reinstalling the limiting pattern in the corresponding area of experience. Holmes offered a specific test for identifying whether a judgment is structural or merely historical. When you bring the person, circumstance, or version of yourself at the center of the suspected charge to mind, hold them there for a moment with complete honesty. Is there a contraction, a tightening, a resistance, a subtle but unmistakable withdrawal of energy? Not necessarily dramatic emotion, not necessarily pain, but a specific, quiet quality of withholding, of a channel that is closed around this subject in a way that it is not closed around neutral subjects. That quality of contraction is the signature of a structural charge. It is the felt sense of the crystallization, the insulator registering its own presence to the practitioner who has directed careful, honest attention toward it. Holmes called this the location signal, not a diagnosis in itself, but a reliable indicator of where to direct the equation. The practitioner must be willing to find the charge in unexpected locations, in places the conscious mind has categorized as resolved, as spiritually released, as long since forgiven. This is one of the most demanding aspects of the locating process, because the deep mind's crystallizations are frequently maintained beneath layers of conscious narrative that declare the matter closed. I forgave my father years ago. I made peace with that circumstance long since. I no longer feel any resentment about that situation. These conscious declarations may be entirely sincere. The conscious mind has genuinely released the emotional charge at its own level, but the subjective mind, which does not process narrative declarations unless they are impressed upon it with the specific depth of impression that the forgiveness equation produces, may be maintaining the structural charge completely intact beneath the conscious narrative of release. The persistent limitation in the corresponding area of experience is the evidence. If the channel is still blocked, the charge is still present, regardless of what the conscious mind has told itself about its state of forgiveness. Holmes was particularly attentive to the experience of practitioners who reported having forgiven a specific person or circumstance with complete sincerity, yet continued to experience the corresponding limitation in their external conditions. His diagnostic response to this experience was consistently the same. The forgiveness that was applied at the level of the conscious mind, sincerely, genuinely, with real intention. But it did not reach the level of the deep mind where the structural charge is installed. Conscious forgiveness is not the equation. It is the decision to apply the equation. The equation itself operates at the depth of the subjective mind, through a specific form of internal operation that impresses the release upon the deep mind with the directness and completeness required for structural dissolution. The decision to forgive is a necessary precondition. It is not the operative act. Conflating the decision with the operation is the most common reason the sincere practitioner believes they have applied the equation when they have not, and why the limitation persists despite what they experience as genuine forgiveness. The precision of identification required by the locating process extends to the specific formulation of the charge itself. Holmes taught that a vague identification produces a vague application, and that a vague application does not dissolve the structural obstruction, but merely reduces its density without eliminating it. The practitioner who identifies the charge as resentment toward my father has made a starting point identification, not a structural one. The structural identification names the specific judgment at the core of the resentment. I hold my father in judgment for his consistent unavailability when I needed his support, and I condemn him for communicating through his absence that I was not worthy of what he withheld. That level of specificity, however uncomfortable to articulate, is the precision at which the equation operates. The equation is addressed to the specific insulator at the specific location where it was installed. A general release in the direction of a broadly named person does not have the structural address that the dissolution of a specific crystallized charge requires. This point about precision extends also to the emotional language of the identification. Holmes cautioned against the practitioner's tendency to soften the formulation of the charge, to use language that is spiritually acceptable rather than structurally accurate. If the core judgment is condemnation, not merely disappointment, not merely hurt, but the specific charge that a person or circumstance was fundamentally wrong, fundamentally unjust, fundamentally violating of something that should have been inviolable, then the identification must name condemnation. If the core charge is the specific belief that a person's action permanently diminished the practitioner's access to some category of experience, that the betrayal installed a permanent ceiling on what is possible for them in that area, then the identification must name that belief. The deep mind responds to honest, precise impression. It does not respond to diplomatically softened approximations of the structural charge that is actually operating. The locating process is complete when the practitioner can state the specific charge with the clarity and precision of a legal brief. This specific person or circumstance, this specific judgment about what they did or failed to do, and, critically, this specific belief about what their action permanently installed in the practitioner's experience of the corresponding area of life. It is that final element, the belief about what the harm permanently installed, that most precisely identifies the charge at the structural level. Because the crystallization in the deep mind is not merely a record of what was done. It is a fixed belief about what that action permanently made true about the practitioner's relationship with a specific domain of experience. That is the insulator. That is the precise structural element that the equation must dissolve, and the identification of that element with clarity, with honest specificity, with the willingness to see it exactly as it is operating in the deep mind, is the foundational requirement for the equation's complete application. Holmes concluded his instruction on the locating process with a formulation that captures its essential quality with complete economy. You are not looking for what hurt you. You are looking for what you decided the hurt made permanently true about your life. That decision, that specific, crystallized, structural determination about what a harm permanently established in the practitioner's experience is the obstruction. It is the kink. It is the insulator in the channel. Find it with that precision, and the equation has a specific address to operate at. Apply it without that precision, and the release is sincere but not structural, genuine at the conscious level, insufficient at the deep level where the permanent crystallization lives. The locating must precede the equation. The specificity of the locating determines the completeness of the equation's effect. This is not a preliminary step. It is the first move in the operative sequence, and it must be performed with the diagnostic precision of a structural engineer who does not guess at the location of the failure, but traces it with methodical, unhurried exactness to its precise point. Throughout the locating process, Holmes counseled the practitioner to maintain a quality of consciousness he described as diagnostic neutrality, a mental stance that is neither emotionally invested in finding the charge nor defensively resistant to finding it, but simply observant. The practitioner who approaches the backward trace with the determination to confirm a specific judgment they have already identified will find what they are looking for and miss the charge that is actually operative. The practitioner who approaches it with the unconscious resistance of a mind that does not want to find what is there will not find it, or will find a surface-level version of it that is emotionally easier to acknowledge and structurally insufficient to dissolve. Diagnostic neutrality, the quality of attention that is genuinely, dispassionately interested in finding what is actually there, is the mental condition under which the locating process produces the precision of identification that the forgiveness equation requires. It is not a passive stance. It is a form of active, disciplined, clinically honest self-examination that most practitioners are capable of, but that few undertake with the specific intention Holmes prescribed. The locating process ends at the moment of precise identification, and that moment has a specific, recognizable quality that Holmes described consistently across his work. When the specific charge at the specific level of structural identification has been correctly named, the practitioner experiences a particular quality of recognition. Not an emotional release, not a sudden insight, but a quiet, unambiguous sense of having located what was actually there. The deep mind registers the correct identification with a quality of settled stillness, the stillness of something that has been present and unnamed for a long time, now finally seen directly. That quality of recognition is the confirmation that the identification is structural rather than merely intellectual. It is the signal that the equation has a precise address. And it is the signal that the practitioner is ready to move from location to application, from finding the kink to removing it. The forgiveness equation, as Holmes formulated it, is a three-stage operative sequence, not a ritual, not a prayer, not an emotional exercise, but a specific mechanical protocol that applies the dissolving operation to the structural charge at the precise location identified in the locating process. Each stage has a specific function. Each must be executed with the quality of consciousness that its function requires. Together, the three stages constitute a complete structural intervention, the removal of a specific insulator from a specific location in the architecture of the deep mind. The first stage is the structural identification, and its function is to bring the crystallized charge into the direct light of conscious awareness, with the full precision of the formulation arrived at during the locating process. This is not a revisiting of the emotional story. It is a precise, clinical naming of the structural element at the level at which it operates. The practitioner states, aloud if possible, or with a full internal force of conscious declaration, if not, I hold the specific name of the person, circumstance, or version of self in judgment for the precise formulation of the specific action, failure, or quality that was judged, and I have maintained the belief that this judgment permanently established the specific limitation as true about my experience. The precision of this declaration is not incidental to its effectiveness. It is the mechanism of its effectiveness. The deep mind responds to the impression it receives from the objective mind with the completeness and precision of that impression. A vague, generalized impression produces a partial, diffuse effect. A precise, specifically formulated declaration of the exact structural charge impresses the deep mind at the precise location of the crystallization and positions the subsequent stages of the equation to operate at that exact point. Holmes taught that the discomfort of this stage, the practitioner's reluctance to articulate the charge with full precision, to name the condemnation clearly and completely rather than approaching it in softer language, is itself a signal of the charge's structural depth. The charges that are most difficult to name with precision are typically the ones most deeply installed in the deep mind's architecture. The practitioner who finds themselves softening the formulation, qualifying the judgment, introducing spiritual language that distances the identification from the raw structural charge. I acknowledge some degree of unresolved feelings toward this person in the domain of trust, rather than I hold this person in judgment as someone who deliberately withheld what I needed and thereby confirmed that I am not deserving of it, is performing a conscious level operation on a deep mind charge. And the equation applied to a conscious level version of the charge will not reach the deep mind location where the actual crystallization is installed. Name it at the level it operates. Completely, precisely, without the diplomatic softening that protects the charge from the equation. The second stage is the equation statement, and it is the operative core of the entire protocol. This is the statement that, when delivered with the full precision and present tense directness that Holmes specified, impresses the dissolving operation upon the deep mind at the exact point of the crystallization. Holmes formulated the equation with deliberate care, each element selected for its specific mechanical function. The equation is not a prayer. It does not address a higher authority and request an intervention. It is a first-person, present tense, unconditional structural declaration made directly by the practitioner to their own deep mind about a specific structural element in their own consciousness. I now release the specific name completely and unconditionally from every judgment I have held. I withdraw every condemning thought, every resentful charge, every unforgiven energy I have directed at this point in my consciousness. The channel is clear. The law flows freely through this area of my experience. The present tense formulation, I now release. The channel is clear. The law flows freely. It is not aspirational. It is declaratory. The equation is stated as a present tense fact, not a desired future state. The deep mind does not receive future tense declarations as current structural changes. It receives present tense declarations as present tense structural realities. The equation must be stated as what is now true, not what is hoped to become true. The unconditional quality of the release is mechanically essential, and Holmes emphasized it with the directness of a teacher who knew it was the element most frequently compromised. The release is complete and unconditional from every judgment I have held, not from the mild ones, not from the ones that are easy to release, not from the ones I have decided are no longer warranted by the evidence. From every judgment, including the ones that are still warranted by the evidence, including the ones the practitioner still privately believes are not only justified, but necessary. The equation is not a statement that the person or circumstance being released did not cause harm. It is not an erasure of discernment. It is the complete withdrawal of the condemning charge, the specific energetic crystallization that has been blocking the channel, regardless of the moral status of the original action. Holmes was precise. Discernment and judgment are not the same operation. Discernment is the mind's capacity to evaluate situations accurately. Judgment, in the technical sense Holmes used, is the condemning charge that is held in the deep mind about the source of harm, and that obstructs the channel in the corresponding area of experience. Discernment can be maintained. The condemning charge must be released. The equation releases the charge, not the discernment. The phrase, "the channel is clear" in the equation statement serves a specific mechanical function that is worth understanding precisely. It is the moment at which the equation transitions from the withdrawal of the old structural element to the declaration of the new structural reality. The withdrawal, "I release, I withdraw," removes the insulator. The declaration, "the channel is clear," installs the replacement condition in the deep mind with present tense structural immediacy. Holmes taught that this replacement declaration is as important as the withdrawal, because the deep mind does not operate in a vacuum. A channel that has been cleared of its obstruction will not remain clear by default. The deep mind's tendency toward pattern consistency will reinstall the familiar crystallization unless the new structural pattern is immediately and clearly declared in its place. The channel is clear. The law flows freely through this area of my experience. This is not a hopeful statement. It is a structural installation, the deliberate, precise impression of the new pattern upon the deep mind at the exact location where the obstruction was just dissolved. Holmes also specified the quality of consciousness with which the equation statement must be delivered, and this specification distinguishes the structural application of the equation from the emotional performance of forgiveness that he identified as one of the most common causes of incomplete result. The equation is not delivered with emotion, not with the warmth of genuine compassion for the person being released, not with the sense of moral satisfaction of someone who has chosen to take the high road, not with the grief of someone finally releasing a long-held pain. All of these qualities of consciousness, while natural and not harmful in themselves, are signatures of conscious-level processing, rather than deep mind structural operation. The equation is delivered with the quality of consciousness Holmes described as the authority of the thinker, the calm, precise, completely certain declaration of a consciousness that knows it is operating the law directly at the structural level of its own deep mind, not warm, not emotional, certain, clinical, complete. The quality of a systems engineer who has located a specific component that requires removal and is removing it, not with feeling, but with precision. The third stage is the confirmation of flow, and its function is the completion of the circuit, the act of turning the practitioner's conscious attention toward the now cleared channel and acknowledging with specific directness the structural change that has just been made. Holmes was careful to specify that this is not visualization of a desired outcome. It is not the image of abundance flowing in, of health restored, of relationships flourishing. It is the image of the flow itself, the cleared channel, the unobstructed current, the law moving through the previously blocked area with the ease and completeness of water through a fully open hose. The attention is directed not at what the flow will produce, that will follow according to the law's own consistency, but at the structural fact of the cleared channel itself. The practitioner holds this image, the open channel, the freely flowing current, with the same present tense declaratory quality of consciousness used in the equation statement. Not, I hope this will flow, not, I believe this is beginning to flow. This is flowing, this channel is open. The law moves through this area of my experience with complete freedom and complete force. The function of the confirmation of flow becomes clear when it is understood in the context of the deep mind's pattern confirmation tendency. The deep mind continuously scans the objective mind's dominant impressions for confirmation of its established patterns. A channel that has been blocked for years has established a structural pattern of blockage, and the deep mind will seek, in the moments following any intervention, confirmation that the pattern is still operative. The confirmation of flow is the practitioner's direct, deliberate provision of a new pattern confirmation. The pattern is now open. Without this stage, the equation, while operative, leaves a structural vacancy that the deep mind's pattern consistency tendency will move to fill with the familiar crystallization. With this stage, the vacancy is immediately and precisely filled with the declared pattern of open flow, and the deep mind receives the complete structural change, withdrawal of the old, installation of the new, as a single, coherent, present tense structural event. Holmes taught that the three-stage sequence should be performed in a specific quality of mental space, what he called the interior of the practitioner's own first cause. This phrase requires unpacking because it is the key to understanding why the equation operates at the structural level of the deep mind rather than at the conscious level of emotional processing. The interior of the practitioner's own first cause is the practitioner's access, through their own consciousness, to the universal mind's creative intelligence, the level at which consciousness is not merely observing its own patterns, but is actively, directly, causatively creating them. It is the mental stance of the thinker. The consciousness that knows it is the cause of its own experience, not the effect of external conditions. The equation, performed from this mental stance, with the full authority of the thinker operating at the level of first cause, impresses the deep mind at the structural depth that produces structural change. The equation, performed from the mental stance of a person who is hoping the words will produce an effect, operates at a shallower level and produces a shallower result. The practitioner must approach the equation not as a supplicant hoping for release, but as the thinker who is, right now, in this moment, restructuring the architecture of their own consciousness with the full authority that the law grants to every practitioner who is willing to claim it. This point about mental stance connects directly to Holmes's broader teaching about the authority of the practitioner's own consciousness over the conditions of their own deep mind. The foundational premise of the science of mind is that the thinker is the cause. The subjective mind, the deep mind, is the medium through which the thinker's patterns are expressed in the conditions of experience. The thinker has complete authority over what patterns are impressed upon the subjective mind, because the subjective mind has no independent pattern-generating capacity. It receives, stores, and expresses. It cannot originate. Therefore, the thinker who performs the forgiveness equation with the full clarity of their identity as first cause is not asking the deep mind to change. They are changing it directly, causatively, with the authority that belongs by the nature of the law to the thinker alone. The equation is the operative expression of that authority, and the mental stance from which it is performed is the condition that determines whether it is expressed at its full structural depth or at a reduced depth that produces incomplete results. Following the completion of the three-stage sequence, Holmes recommended a specific quality of after-action consciousness that he considered as important to the equation's complete effectiveness as the sequence itself. He called it acting as though, a deliberate, sustained behavioral confirmation of the structural change that has just been made. In the hours and days following the application of the equation, the practitioner moves through the domain of the now cleared channel as though the flow has already resumed, not with the anxious, checking quality of someone waiting to see if the equation worked, but with the calm, certain quality of someone who has performed a structural operation they know to be complete and is simply allowing its results to express at the rate and in the form that the law determines. This acting as though is not a performance of belief. It is the behavioral expression of structural certainty, the practitioner's acknowledgement in their moment-to-moment movement through life that the channel is open and the law is flowing. The acting as though directive is frequently misunderstood as wishful thinking, the pretense that desired conditions already exist in the external world. Holmes was careful to distinguish it from that. The practitioner is not pretending that the financial supply has already arrived, that the health has already been restored, that the relationship has already transformed. They are acting from the structural certainty that the channel through which the supply must flow to reach those areas is now open, that the obstruction has been dissolved, the kink has been removed, the circuit has been cleared. The external results will follow according to the law's own timing, which Holmes acknowledged as not always predictable in its specific form or exact schedule. What the practitioner can know with certainty and act from is the structural fact of the cleared channel. That certainty, expressed in calm and consistent behavior, is itself an ongoing confirmation to the deep mind that the new structural pattern is operative, reinforcing the confirmation of flow and sealing the equation's effect against the deep mind's pattern consistency tendency. Holmes offered one final instruction regarding the frequency of application that is worth stating with precision. The equation should be applied once, completely, at full structural depth, not repeatedly to the same charge. This instruction is counterintuitive for practitioners accustomed to the repetitive application of affirmations, and it requires careful understanding to not be misapplied. The equation is not an affirmation to be repeated until it produces an emotional shift. It is a structural operation performed once at the precise location of the crystallization, with the full authority of the thinker operating at the level of first cause. Applied once with complete precision and full structural depth, it dissolves the crystallization completely. Repeated applications of the same equation to the same charge are a symptom of doubt, of the practitioner's uncertainty about whether the first application was complete. And doubt, as Holmes taught, is itself a reinstallation of the pattern that the equation was designed to dissolve. Perform the equation once, completely. From the mental stance of first cause, state the confirmation of flow with full present tense certainty. Act as though the channel is clear, because it is. And do not return to the dissolved charge with repeated applications that signal to the deep mind that the first application may not have been definitive. If, after the application of the equation and a genuine period of acting as though the channel is clear, the corresponding limitation persists in the external conditions, Holmes's diagnostic guidance is not to repeat the equation for the same charge. It is to perform the locating process again, because the persistence of the limitation after a complete application of the equation indicates that the identified charge was not the deepest or most structurally significant charge installed in that channel. There may be a layer beneath the one that was dissolved, a more foundational crystallization installed earlier or at a deeper level of identification that the first application did not reach because the locating process did not go far enough. The practitioner performs the backward trace again, from the cleared position of a consciousness that has already dissolved one layer of obstruction and identifies the deeper charge with the same precision that the equation requires. The process is not circular. Each application of the equation clears one specific layer, and the persistence of limitation after a genuine application is reliable guidance to the presence of a deeper layer requiring the same procedure. This is not failure. It is the progressive, systematic clearing of a channel that was obstructed at multiple depths, each application bringing the practitioner closer to the full, unobstructed flow that the source has been pressing toward throughout the entire history of the limitation. There is a category of forgiveness application that fails not because the practitioner lacks sincerity, not because the equation was incorrectly formulated, and not because the obstruction was too deep or too old to yield to the equation's operation. It fails because of a structural compromise at the precise point that the equation requires to be complete, a compromise that produces the full appearance of forgiveness while leaving the crystallized charge intact beneath the performance. Holmes identified these specific failure patterns with diagnostic precision and named them not as moral failures, but as mechanical errors, the kind of errors that a skilled engineer could observe in a system and correct without judgment, because they are the product of incomplete understanding rather than insufficient intention. The first and most critical failure pattern, and the one that Holmes named as the most neglected application of the forgiveness equation in the history of sincere metaphysical practice, is the failure to apply the equation to the self. This is the specific form of forgiveness whose absence was promised as the revelation in part 1 of this teaching, and it is now named exactly. Self-forgiveness is not a supplement to the forgiveness equation. It is its most operative, most structurally significant application, and its omission represents the single most common source of persistent metaphysical failure in serious experienced practitioners. Holmes was unambiguous about this, categorical in a way that admits no qualification. The practitioner who has forgiven every other person in their life, cleared every relational channel, dissolved every interpersonal crystallization, while maintaining, in the deep mind's most foundational layer, a crystallized self-condemnation about their own past choices, failures, or qualities, has cleared every secondary channel while leaving the primary obstruction completely intact. And because self-condemnation is installed not in the channel corresponding to a specific area of experience, but at the level of identity itself, the foundational layer that underlies every channel simultaneously, it does not block one specific area of the practitioner's life. It reduces the capacity of every channel. It is not a kink in one section of the hose. It is a reduction in the hose's diameter at its very root, affecting the flow through every section downstream. The mechanism of self-condemnation structural damage is more encompassing and more damaging than any interpersonal unforgiveness, precisely because of its location at the identity level. Every unforgiven charge held against another person, institution, or circumstance is installed at the level of relationship, in the channel connecting the practitioner's consciousness to a specific domain of external experience. These are serious obstructions, and their dissolution is critical for the flow of the law in the corresponding areas. But the charge of self-condemnation is different in kind, not merely in degree. It is installed at the level of the practitioner's identity, their core, structural belief about who they are, what they deserve, and what is possible for them as a specific individual in a specific life. Every other channel the practitioner possesses runs through this foundational layer. Every decree, every affirmation, every prayer, every spiritual mind treatment passes through the identity layer before it reaches its intended destination in any specific area of experience. A practitioner carrying a deeply installed self-condemnation is therefore not applying their metaphysical techniques through a system with one obstructed channel. They are applying them through a system whose foundational capacity has been reduced by the structural damage at its most primary level. The results are consistent with this description: partial effectiveness everywhere, complete effectiveness nowhere, and a persistent, inexplicable ceiling on the degree to which any technique can produce its full potential result. Holmes identified the most common forms of self-condemnation with the observational precision of someone who had encountered them in enough individual cases to categorize them reliably. The first and most common is what he called the unforgiven decision, the specific past choice that produced significant harm to a person the practitioner loved, or to themselves, or to their own life's trajectory, and that has been carried as a structural self-condemnation in the deep mind ever since. The practitioner may have processed this intellectually many times, may have contextualized it, rationalized it, understood the circumstances that produced it, and arrived at a conscious narrative of self-forgiveness. But if the specific condemning judgment about that decision, the core belief that making it revealed something permanently damning about who the practitioner is, has not been dissolved at the structural level of the deep mind through the precise application of the forgiveness equation, then the intellectual narrative of self-forgiveness is exactly what it sounds like: a story told by the conscious mind over the top of a structural charge that has not been touched. The intellectual narrative is sincere. The structural charge is still operative, and the limitation corresponding to it is still expressing in the practitioner's experience with full consistency. The second major form of self-condemnation Holmes identified is the quality condemnation, the crystallized judgment about a persistent personal quality, tendency, or pattern that the practitioner considers fundamentally unworthy of the life they are trying to create. This is subtler than the unforgiven decision because it is not attached to a specific past event, but to an ongoing assessment of the self as a specific type of person, as someone who is, by their nature, too fearful, too unworthy, too flawed in some specific way to be the legitimate recipient of the conditions they are attempting to operate the law to produce. This quality condemnation is installed not by a single event, but by years of accumulated self-assessment, and it operates in the deep mind as a continuous, habitual pattern of self-directed judgment that the practitioner frequently does not even recognize as judgment, because it has become indistinguishable from what they consider honest self-appraisal. Holmes was precise about the distinction. Accurate self-assessment is discernment, the thinker's clear-eyed understanding of their current capacities and their areas for development. Self-condemnation is judgment, the crystallized belief that a specific quality makes the practitioner permanently unworthy of operating the law with full effectiveness. The first is functional, the second is structural obstruction at the identity level, and it requires the same equation applied to the self with the same completeness and unconditionality required for interpersonal forgiveness to dissolve it. The application of the forgiveness equation to the self follows the same three-stage structure as its interpersonal application, with one critical adjustment. The specificity of the structural identification must reach the level of the core condemning belief about the self's fundamental nature or worth, not merely the surface level of the regretted action or quality. The equation statement takes the form, I now release this version of myself, the self who made this decision or the self who carries this quality, completely and unconditionally from every judgment I have held. I withdraw every condemning thought, every self-directed resentment, every charge of unworthiness I have installed in my own identity. I am clear. The channel of my full potential flows freely through an identity that I have now released from every structural condemnation. The confirmation of flow that follows is directed not at a specific area of external experience, as in interpersonal forgiveness, but at the practitioner's own identity as the unobstructed channel of the universals. Mind's full, creative intelligence. I am the thinker. I am the unobstructed expression of the universal mind's first cause. There is no structural charge in my identity that reduces my capacity to receive and express the full potential of the law. This is not affirmation in the conventional sense. It is the declaration of a structural condition that the equation has just established. The replacement pattern that Holmes's protocol requires to be installed immediately in place of the dissolved condemnation. Holmes observed that the practitioner's resistance to self-forgiveness is typically deeper and more sophisticated than their resistance to interpersonal forgiveness. And the reason is rooted in a subtle but consequential confusion between self-forgiveness and self-justification. The practitioner who has caused genuine harm through a past decision or pattern of behavior frequently experiences the forgiveness of self as morally problematic, as if releasing the condemning charge against themselves were the equivalent of declaring that the harm they caused was acceptable, that the person they hurt was not owed an accounting, or that their own moral failures were without consequence. This confusion is not irrational. It reflects a genuine moral seriousness that is, in many ways, admirable. But it is, in Holmes's mechanical analysis, the precise confusion that allows the structural charge of self-condemnation to survive intact beneath a genuine moral sensitivity, because the practitioner will not apply the equation to a charge they believe they are morally required to maintain. Holmes's clarification is precise. The application of the forgiveness equation to the self is not a moral exoneration. It does not declare the past action acceptable. It does not remove the practitioner's responsibility for making amends where amends are possible, or for changing the patterns that produce the harm. It dissolves the specific structural crystallization, the condemning charge about the self's fundamental nature and worth, that has been blocking the channels of the practitioner's consciousness, and thereby reducing their capacity to be, in the present and future, the person who can make the amends and create the change that the moral sensitivity is rightly calling for. Self-condemnation does not make the practitioner more morally accountable. It makes them less capable. Holmes formulated the principle underlying the entire forgiveness equation with a directness that contains everything. Forgiveness is not an act of moral generosity that you extend to those who have wronged you. It is an act of structural engineering that you perform on your own consciousness for your own liberation. This formulation is not rhetorical. It is the most precise available description of what the forgiveness equation actually is and what it actually does. The person you have refused to forgive, whether another human being, a circumstance, a failed institution, or a past version of yourself, is not imprisoned by your unforgiveness. They are not diminished by it. They are not aware of it in most cases. The block is not in their consciousness. It is entirely, exclusively, completely in yours. And it is blocking not your relationship with them. It is blocking your relationship with the law. It is blocking the flow of the universal mind's creative intelligence through the exact area of your experience where the unforgiven charge is installed. They are living their life. You are living with a structural obstruction in your channel. This reframing has practical consequences that the practitioner must internalize with complete honesty if the equation is to be applied without reservation. The question, do they deserve to be forgiven, is entirely irrelevant to the application of the equation, not because the question is not worth asking in a moral context, but because it is the wrong question in a mechanical context. The operative question is not whether the person deserves release from your judgment. They are not held by your judgment. You are held by your judgment. The operative question is whether you are willing to remove from your own consciousness the specific structural obstruction that has been interrupting your own circuit, the one that has been blocking the delivery of the supply you need in the exact area that most matters to you at this stage of your life. That question, posed correctly, dissolves the moral complexity around the equation's application. You are not forgiving them for their sake. You are clearing your channel for your own sake, for the sake of every area of your life that is downstream from the obstruction you have been maintaining. This is the specific form of understanding that transforms the forgiveness equation from a spiritual obligation into a mechanical tool. And It is the transformation Holmes considered most important for the experienced practitioner to make. The practitioner who applies the equation as an obligation because they have been taught that forgiveness is spiritually required, and they are, therefore, attempting to do the spiritually required thing, is applying it from a conscious level motivation that does not generate the structural quality of impression required to dissolve a deep mind crystallization. The practitioner who applies the equation as a precise structural intervention performed on their own consciousness for their own specific liberation, because they have understood with the mechanical clarity of a systems engineer looking at a kinked hose that the only way to receive the supply they need in the blocked area is to remove the insulator that is blocking it, is applying it from the mental stance of the thinker operating at first cause. The quality of consciousness is different, the depth of impression is different, and the structural result is different. Holmes offered the practitioner who is struggling to find the internal willingness to apply the equation completely, who understands the mechanism but finds themselves maintaining a reservation around the unconditionality of the release, a specific consideration that he described as both compassionate and mechanically precise. Consider what the unforgiven charge has cost you, not in emotional terms, not the suffering of carrying resentment, not the psychological burden of maintained judgment. In mechanical terms, what specific supply has been blocked from the specific area of your experience that corresponds to the charge? For how long? At what cost to the life you were building and the conditions you needed to arrive in time to matter? The practitioner who traces the specific correspondence between their most significant unforgiven charge and their most persistent area of limitation, and who calculates with honest precision the accumulated cost of the obstruction in terms of years of supply that did not arrive through a blocked channel, typically finds that the question of the other person's desert becomes not less morally significant, but significantly less operative as a reason to maintain the charge. The charge has cost you. It has cost you specifically in the area of your experience that corresponds to it for exactly the duration it has been maintained. Apply the equation, not because they deserve it, because you have paid enough. Holmes also addressed, with the directness of a teacher who had witnessed this pattern repeatedly, the experience of the practitioner who applies the equation and then, in subsequent days or weeks, finds themselves returning to the unforgiven charge, rehearsing the original harm, reactivating the judgment, experiencing the familiar contraction of the blocked channel. Holmes described this return not as evidence that the equation failed, but as the deep mind's pattern consistency tendency operating in the absence of the sustained replacement pattern. The crystallization has been dissolved. The charge has been removed, but the mind's habitual movement toward the familiar pattern, the grooved neural pathway of returning to the resentment, continues to operate as a behavioral reflex for some time after the structural dissolution. The correct response to this return is not to reapply the equation, which, as noted earlier, signals doubt about the first application's completeness. The correct response is to recognize the return for what it is, a reflex without a structural basis, the ghost of a pattern whose structural foundation has been removed. Acknowledge it. State, simply and with complete certainty, This charge has been dissolved. There is nothing to return to. And direct consciousness back to the confirmation of flow, the image of the cleared channel, the freely flowing current, the law moving through the previously blocked area with ease and completeness. This is not avoidance. It is the practitioner's refusal to reinstall a dissolved pattern by giving it the renewed structural attention that would re-establish its crystallization in the deep mind. The Master's final instruction on the mechanics of the forgiveness equation, the one that Holmes returned to at the close of every extended teaching on this subject, is the instruction to apply it systematically, not reactively. The reactive application of the equation, forgiveness, applied only when a specific resentment is causing conscious distress, or when a specific limitation has become unbearable, or when a spiritual teacher recommends it as a response to a current crisis, is effective for the specific charges it addresses, but leaves the deeper, quieter, more habitual crystallizations undisturbed. These are the charges that have been in place so long that they no longer produce conscious emotional distress, that have been absorbed into the practitioner's structural identity as simply how things are, or the way I am, and that are, precisely because of their quiet permanence, the most structurally damaging of all. The systematic application of the equation, the deliberate, methodical examination of every area of persistent limitation in one's experience, the locating of the corresponding charge in each area, and the complete application of the equation to each charge in sequence is the Master's approach to channel clearing. It does not wait for distress. It operates proactively on the architecture of consciousness. Clearing channels before their obstruction has produced crisis-level limitation. And it is the approach that, applied with the consistency and precision that Holmes's teaching demands, produces the most complete and enduring transformation available to the serious practitioner of the science of mind. In electrical circuit theory, the concept of resistance describes the property of a conducting material that opposes the flow of electrical current through it. Every material through which current flows imposes some degree of opposition, some degree of resistance to that flow. The consequence of resistance is twofold and precise. First, it reduces the amount of current that reaches the intended point of delivery in the circuit. Less current arrives to power the load than was available at the source. Second, the energy that is lost to resistance is not neutralized. It is converted to heat. It dissipates into the environment as waste, performing no useful work in the circuit's intended function. The greater the resistance in any segment of the circuit, the less current reaches the load in that segment, and the greater the amount of energy converted to heat and lost. At sufficient levels of resistance, the current reaching the load may be insufficient to power it at all, not because the source lacks the capacity to supply it, but because the resistive element between the source and the load is converting the supplied energy to waste before it can arrive. The parallel to Holmes's model of unforgiveness as structural obstruction in the circuit of consciousness is not approximate. It is exact. The universal mind is the source, fully and continuously powered, its supply not reducible by the demands placed upon it. The channels of consciousness are the conductors, the medium through which the source's creative intelligence flows. To reach the specific areas of experience the practitioner is attempting to power. And the unforgiven charge, crystallized in the deep mind at the point corresponding to a specific area of experience, is the resistive element, the material installed in the conductor that opposes the flow of the source's creative current and reduces the amount of that current reaching its intended destination. The crystallization does not block the current the way a physical insulator blocks it. There is no zero flow condition in consciousness, as there would be in a completely insulated electrical circuit. But the reduction in effective current reaching the specific area of experience corresponding to the unforgiven charge is functionally equivalent. Not enough creative intelligence arrives to power the desired condition in that area, regardless of the quality of the source or the sophistication of the practitioner's technique. The circuit theory analogy extends into its most precise and instructive implication when the relationship between resistance and voltage is examined. In an electrical circuit, Ohm's law states a specific relationship between voltage, current, and resistance. The current flowing through any segment of the circuit is equal to the voltage applied across that segment divided by the resistance of that segment. This means that increasing the voltage, the driving force, will produce more current in a low-resistance circuit in direct proportion to the increase. But in a high-resistance circuit, the same increase in voltage produces a disproportionately smaller increase in current, because the resistive element is converting an increasing proportion of the additional voltage to waste heat, rather than allowing it to drive more current through the circuit. And at very high resistance levels, additional voltage increases produce negligible additional current. The circuit is essentially saturated with waste, and no practical amount of additional voltage can compensate for the structural resistance. This is the precise mechanical description of what occurs when the practitioner of sincere, sustained metaphysical technique encounters a deeply crystallized, unforgiven charge in the channel corresponding to their most significant area of persistent limitation. Prayer is voltage. Affirmation is voltage. Visualization, decree, and spiritual mind treatment are all voltage increases applied to the source side of a circuit. In low-resistance channels, they produce proportional results. In high-resistance channels, channels obstructed by deep, long-standing, unforgiven charges, they produce partial results at best and no results at worst, regardless of the quality or quantity of the spiritual effort being applied. The solution that circuit theory prescribes for a high-resistance circuit is not a further increase in voltage. It is resistance reduction, the replacement of the high-resistance material in the conductor with a lower resistance material, or the removal of the resistive element entirely. In Holmes's system, this is the forgiveness equation, the specific operative procedure that reduces the resistance in the channel from the level of the crystallized charge to the level of an unobstructed conductor. When the resistance is reduced, the current that was always available from the source flows through the channel with the force that the source has always been capable of delivering. Not more force than before, the same force that was always there, now reaching its destination because the resistive element that was converting it to waste has been removed. The practitioner does not experience more of the universal mind after applying the forgiveness equation. They experience the same universal mind now flowing through a channel that is no longer wasting its supply in the conversion of creative intelligence to the psychic heat of maintained resentment. The concept of a short circuit in electrical theory provides the final, most instructive element of this parallel. A short circuit occurs when current finds an unintended path of zero resistance to ground, bypassing the intended load entirely and flowing directly to the return path without performing any useful work. In a psychological and spiritual sense, Holmes' teaching implies that the unforgiven charge functions as a kind of short circuit in the consciousness. The creative intelligence of the universal mind, encountering the resistance of the crystallized charge in the channel toward the desired condition, is deflected. It follows the path of least resistance through the consciousness, producing results in clear, low-resistance areas, while the high-resistance area remains chronically underpowered. The practitioner observes this as the familiar pattern of comprehensive results in some areas of life alongside complete stagnation in one specific area. Not because the source is providing unequal supply to different areas, but because the creative current is finding its natural path around the high-resistance obstruction, arriving in full force only where the channel is clear. Remove the resistance, apply the equation, and the creative current flows to every area of the circuit with the full force of the source, not more supply, fewer losses. Resistance in a circuit is also cumulative. Multiple resistive elements in series multiply the effective resistance of the conductor beyond the sum of their individual contributions at high resistance levels. This maps precisely onto Holmes' observation that multiple unforgiven charges in the same channel, multiple layers of crystallization corresponding to the same area of experience installed at different depths by different events over the course of a life, produce a combined obstructive effect that exceeds the simple addition of their individual contributions. The practitioner who has experienced multiple betrayals, losses, or violations in the same area of life and has formed and maintained crystallized charges around each of them is carrying a channel resistance that may be orders of magnitude greater than any single charge would produce. This is the structural basis for the most entrenched and seemingly immovable limitations in human experience, the ones where the practitioner has applied not just sincere spiritual technique, but years or decades of sophisticated, sustained metaphysical effort without producing movement. The channel is not merely kinked, it is serially obstructed, multiple crystallizations in multiple layers, each requiring the precise application of the equation at its specific point of installation. The systematic clearing practice that Holmes recommended is designed precisely for this condition. Not the single application of the equation to a single charge, but the methodical, layer-by-layer clearing of a channel that has accumulated resistance over the full depth of a human life. Holmes's use of the circuit model was not merely analogical. He taught that the relationship between consciousness and the universal mind is, at the deepest level, an energetic relationship, a relationship in which the practitioner's consciousness functions literally as the channel through which a specific quality of creative intelligence flows into expression in the conditions of the practitioner's experience. The language of electricity is not a metaphor imported from a different domain. It is a description of the same phenomenon at two different levels of resolution. The visible, measurable level at which electrical current flows through physical conductors, and the invisible, immeasurable but operative level at which the universal mind's creative intelligence flows through the channels of individual consciousness. The laws governing both are identical in their logic, their precision, and their consistency. Resistance reduces flow. Resistance reduction restores flow. The equation is the resistance reduction. The flow is the supply that the practitioner has been attempting to bring into expression. This is not philosophy. This is the operational description of a mechanism, and the mechanism operates with the same impersonal mathematical consistency as any electrical circuit in any laboratory on Earth. The implication of this parallel for the practitioner's approach to their existing spiritual practice is both practical and specific. Every technique in the practitioner's toolkit, prayer, affirmation, visualization, decree, spiritual mind treatment, is a voltage application technique. It increases the driving force applied to the source side of the circuit. In a fully clear channel, the voltage increase produces proportional current increase, results that are direct, measurable, and satisfying in proportion to the effort applied. In a partially obstructed channel, the voltage increase produces partial results, improvement, progress, evidence of the law working, but not the full expression the practitioner knows should be possible. In a high-resistance channel, the voltage increase produces minimal or no movement in the obstructed area, regardless of the quality or quantity of the technique. Most experienced practitioners have encountered all three of these conditions in different areas of their experience and have correctly identified that some areas are more responsive than others to their techniques. What Holmes provides is the precise mechanical reason for this differential responsiveness and the specific intervention that addresses the reason rather than the symptom. Reduce the resistance, apply the equation, and allow every technique in the existing toolkit to operate in the cleared channel with the full proportional effectiveness that was designed into the law from the beginning. Consider the case of a woman who had practiced the principles of the science of mind with exceptional discipline and evident sincerity for 14 years. She had studied Holmes's work systematically, attended serious instruction, and applied the law with the consistency of a practitioner who understood that results follow application with the same reliability that effect follows cause. Her results confirmed this. In every area of her life that she had directed her practice toward with focused intention, she had experienced clear, demonstrable, and in some cases, remarkable evidence of the law operating through her consciousness. Her financial conditions had transformed significantly from where they had been before her practice began. Her professional life had expanded in ways she could directly trace to specific applications of the law. Her closest relationships had deepened and clarified in response to her sustained inner work. By any observable measure, she was not a marginal practitioner. She was, in every area but one, a demonstrably effective one. The exception was her health, specifically a chronic physical condition that had been present for the entirety of her practice, that had resisted every healing principle she had applied to it, and that her physicians had been unable to resolve through medical intervention despite 14 years of treatment. The mystery this woman presented was precisely the diagnostic pattern Holmes had described: comprehensive effectiveness in every area of life alongside complete, inexplicable, immovable limitation in one specific area. The mystery was not one of faith. She had demonstrated faith operatively across 14 years of consistent results. It was not one of technique. She had applied the same techniques that produced clear results in every other area of her experience. It was not one of commitment. 14 years of sustained, disciplined practice is the opposite of inconsistency. The mystery had only one available diagnostic resolution, consistent with Holmes's framework: a structural obstruction in the specific channel corresponding to the area of limitation, an unforgiven charge installed at a depth the techniques had not reached, in a location that produced resistance specifically and exclusively in the channel through which healing had to flow to reach her physical experience. Holmes worked with this woman not on her healing practice, but on what he called her unforgiveness inventory, a systematic, diagnostic examination of the charges she was carrying in the deep mind, traced with specific attention to the domain of her health. He noted in the approach he took that the correspondence between an unforgiven charge and the area of experience it obstructs is not always immediately obvious. The blocked area and the apparent subject of the charge may not share a surface-level thematic connection. The deep mind's architecture is structured not by logical category, but by energetic correspondence. And the charge that is blocking a practitioner's health channel may be centered not on health-related events, but on any experience that involved, at its core, the belief that the practitioner's body, physical integrity, or fundamental well-being was not deserving of protection, care, or restoration. With this understanding directing his diagnostic work, Holmes did not confine his examination to health-related resentments or body-directed condemnations. He traced her unforgiveness inventory through its full structural depth in every domain of her experience, looking for the charge that carried the specific energetic signature of the belief that her physical well-being was not deserving of the law's full healing expression. After 3 sessions of this systematic examination, Holmes identified the obstruction. 22 years earlier, before her practice had begun, in a period of her life she described as both formative and painful, she had made a specific decision that had resulted in significant and lasting harm to a person she deeply loved. The external circumstances of that decision were complex, the kind of circumstances that the conscious mind can readily contextualize, rationalize, and arrive at a reasonable narrative of understanding and self-forgiveness. And she had done precisely that. She had processed the event intellectually many times. She had arrived at a conscious narrative that was, by any reasonable assessment, fair, compassionate, and balanced in its treatment of her own responsibility and the complexity of the situation. She believed with complete sincerity that she had forgiven herself. She had been telling herself that the matter was resolved for nearly as long as her practice had been active. Beneath that conscious narrative, however, at the level of the deep mind structural architecture, a specific self-condemnation remained completely intact and continuously operative. It was not the general guilt of a person who had made a mistake. It was a precise crystallized belief installed in the identity layer of the subjective mind that the harm she had caused revealed something permanently true about her fundamental nature, a specific quality of selfishness or cowardice or moral inadequacy that she had never been willing to name directly, because naming it directly would require applying the equation to a charge she had unconsciously determined she was morally required to maintain. The self-condemnation was not felt as self-condemnation. It had been absorbed into the deep mind structural architecture as a permanent defining feature of her identity. One of the foundational beliefs through which she received every experience, interpreted every event, and processed every possibility for her own life, including and specifically including the possibility of complete physical healing and restoration. Holmes administered the forgiveness equation at the exact point of installation, not at the surface of the conscious narrative she had constructed around the event, but at the depth of the specific, self-directed condemning charge that the narrative had been covering. The session was, by her own account, the most undramatic spiritual experience of her 14 years of practice. There was no emotional catharsis, there was no sudden sense of relief, no release of long-held tears, no experience of spiritual breakthrough in the conventional sense. There was simply the precise methodical application of the three-stage protocol to a specific charge at a specific location in the deep mind's architecture, followed by what she described as a quality of quiet, somewhat bewildered stillness. The charge, named with the precision the equation requires and released with the unconditionality it demands, dissolved with the same undramatic completeness of a physical insulator removed from an electrical circuit. No drama, a structural change. Within 6 months of that session, the chronic health condition that had persisted throughout 14 years of sincere, sophisticated, and earnest application of healing principles had resolved. Her physicians described its resolution as medically inexplicable. The improvement was not gradual, not consistent with the trajectory of the condition's 14-year history, and not attributable to any change in the medical treatment she had been receiving. From the perspective of the law, as Holmes understood it, there was nothing inexplicable about the resolution at all. The healing that her practice had been directing toward her physical experience for 14 years had been pressing against an obstructed channel with consistent faithfulness throughout the entire period. When the obstruction was dissolved, when the specific self-condemnation installed at the identity level of her deep mind was removed through the precise application of the forgiveness equation, the healing that had always been available flowed through the cleared channel to its intended destination with the full force of a source that had never been reduced. Not gradually, not tentatively, with the completeness and immediacy of a supply that had been fully available for 14 years and had been blocked not by the absence of the law's healing intelligence, but by the single structural insulator that had been preventing its delivery. Holmes drew from this case, and from many others with the same structural pattern, a principle he stated with the concision of complete certainty. No healing technique, however precise, can deliver its result through a channel that a structural charge has closed. The technique is not the variable. The channel is the variable. And the forgiveness equation is the specific intervention that changes the variable, that changes everything. The woman's story is not an exception. It is the illustration of a rule, the precise, mechanical, consistently observable rule that Holmes dedicated a significant portion of his teaching career to communicating to the practitioners who had worked with sincerity and discipline, and still found one area of their experience inexplicably unmoved. The obstruction was not in their technique, it was not in their faith, it was not in the source, it was in the channel at a specific location in the form of a specific charge, resolvable by a specific equation. Apply the equation, clear the channel, receive the supply. Holmes's teaching on forgiveness as an operative equation does not add a new technique to the practitioner's existing toolkit. It restructures the toolkit's operating environment, the foundational condition in which every technique the practitioner has been applying operates. Every affirmation, every prayer, every decree, every visualization, every spiritual mind treatment the practitioner has ever applied has been operating through the channel that the forgiveness equation clears. Its effectiveness has always been proportional to the openness of that channel, which means that every result the practitioner has achieved, however impressive, in conditions where an unforgiven charge was obstructing the corresponding channel, has been a partial result, not a failure, a partial achievement of what was fully available. The equation does not improve the technique. It removes the obstruction that was preventing the technique from producing its full structural result. This realization carries a specific implication that the practitioner must confront directly. The results that have eluded them in the obstructed area of their experience are not evidence of the law's limits. They are evidence of the law's precision, the precision with which it responds to the exact state of the channel through which it must flow to deliver the supply to that area. A fully open channel produces the full result. A partially obstructed channel produces a partial result. A highly obstructed channel produces no result regardless of the quality of the technique applied upstream. The map of the practitioner's differential results, the areas where the law has worked beautifully alongside the areas where it has seemed completely inoperative, is a precise map of the differential openness of their channels. Read that map. Locate the charges that correspond to the closed areas, apply the equation, and discover what the law has been attempting to deliver to those areas throughout the entire history of the practitioner's sincere, sophisticated, and ultimately partially obstructed practice. The systematic application of the forgiveness equation to every persistent area of limitation in the practitioner's experience is not a supplementary practice. An addition to the protocol of affirmation and prayer and visualization that the practitioner already maintains. It is the prerequisite maintenance of the system through which every other practice operates. Holmes compared it to the maintenance of a physical instrument. The finest piano, played by the most accomplished musician, produces beautiful sound only from the strings that are in tune. The strings that are not in tune produce not silence, but dissonance, a sound that is worse than absence, that actively interferes with the intended harmony. The practitioner who has been applying sophisticated metaphysical technique through a consciousness carrying multiple unforgiven charges has been playing a partially tuned instrument, producing genuine beauty in the areas that are clear, while the obstructed areas produce the metaphysical equivalent of dissonance, not just absence of the desired condition, but active, structurally maintained limitation. Tune the instrument, apply the equation, and play the full range of what the law has been waiting to express through a consciousness that is, for the first time in the practitioner's experience, fully prepared to receive it, the completeness of Holmes's system, the specific architectural completeness that distinguishes the forgiveness equation from every other technique in the practitioner's toolkit, is rooted in the fact that it operates at the level of cause rather than effect, Every other technique addresses the thinker's current pattern, the quality of the thought, prayer, or affirmation being directed at the desired condition. The forgiveness equation addresses the structural architecture of the channel through which every pattern must travel to reach its expression in experience. It is, therefore, not a more powerful technique in the conventional sense. It is a different order of intervention, operating at the foundational level where the system's capacity to receive and express the law is determined. Apply it at that level, with the precision and completeness that Holmes specified. And every subsequent technique the practitioner applies operates in a transformed system, a system whose fundamental capacity to receive and express the law's creative intelligence has been permanently increased by the removal of the structural obstructions that were limiting it. The transformation that follows the systematic, complete application of the forgiveness equation is not the transformation of the external conditions alone, though those conditions will change with the immediacy and completeness of a supply that was always available and is now flowing through cleared channels. The deeper transformation is the transformation of the practitioner's own identity, their experience of themselves as the thinker, the first cause, the unobstructed expression of the universal mind's full creative intelligence in their own specific life. The practitioner who has cleared their channels, who has applied the equation with precision and completeness to every persistent obstruction they could identify, does not experience the world as a place where the law sometimes works and sometimes doesn't. They experience it as what Holmes always said it was, a precise, impersonal, completely consistent response to the exact state of their own consciousness. That experience, that direct, lived certainty of the law's complete consistency, is the transformation that no technique alone, however powerfully applied, can produce through an obstructed channel. It requires the cleared channel. It requires the equation, and it arrives. With the same mathematical certainty as every other expression of the law, the moment the obstruction that was preventing it has been dissolved. The law has never failed you. Let that statement land with the full weight of its mechanical precision, not as consolation, not as reassurance, as a structural fact derived directly from the foundational axiom of the science of mind. The source is infinite, impersonal, and consistent. An infinite source cannot be depleted by demand. An impersonal source cannot be withheld by preference. A consistent source cannot deliver supply in one area while withholding it in another, based on the subjective merits of the recipient. Therefore, with the logical inevitability of a conclusion that follows from premises that admit no exception, the law has never failed you. Every moment of apparent failure in your experience was not a failure of the law. It was the law operating with perfect precision, delivering exactly what the state of the channel in the corresponding area of your experience made it structurally possible to deliver. Nothing more, nothing less, nothing other than what the channel state determined. The supply has never been withheld from you. What has blocked the supply's delivery was installed by you, not with malice, not with the intention of self-obstruction, not with any awareness of the mechanical consequence, but in the completely understandable, completely human response to pain, betrayal, violation, and loss. In a moment of harm, or in a year of justified resentment, or in decades of quiet self-condemnation maintained so long it became indistinguishable from identity. You installed a specific structural charge in a specific channel of your consciousness. The installation was not a spiritual failure, it was a human response. The persistence of the installation, the continuous maintenance of the charge through rehearsal, confirmation, and habitual return has been the operative factor in the limitation, not the law, not the source, not the insufficiency of your practice or the inadequacy of your faith. The charge, the insulator, the kink in the hose that has been blocking the delivery of the supply that the source never stopped pressing toward you through the channel it could not penetrate. That insulator is not permanent. This is the specific declaration that Holmes wanted every practitioner carrying a long-standing limitation to hear with complete precision. The crystallization is not structural in the sense of being immovable. It is structural in the sense of being an actual element in the deep mind's architecture. Not merely an emotional state, but a genuine structural feature of the subjective mind's current configuration. And structural features of the deep mind that were installed by the thinker's impressions can be dissolved by the thinker's impressions. The same authority that installed the charge is the authority that removes it. The thinker placed it there. The thinker can dissolve it. The equation is the thinker's precise, authoritative declaration of dissolution, addressed at the exact location of the crystallization, delivered with the complete unconditionality that structural dissolution requires. The insulator dissolves when the equation is correctly applied, not eventually, not gradually. At the moment of application, when the insulator dissolves, the supply rushes through, not a trickle, not the tentative resumption of a flow that has been interrupted for a long time and is cautiously testing the cleared path. The full, complete, immediately available supply that the source has been pressing against the obstruction with complete faithfulness throughout the entire duration of the block. The source was not waiting. It was not rebuilding. It was fully operational at every moment of the obstruction's history, pressing its complete creative intelligence against the channel from the source side with the same consistency and the same force it will express on the day the channel is cleared. When the clearing occurs, the supply that arrives is the full supply of an undiminished source, not proportioned to the practitioner's merit, not graduated according to the duration of their waiting, not modulated by the difficulty of the forgiveness that made the clearing possible. Full, immediate, complete, because the source has never been anything other than full, immediate, and complete. The obstruction was the only variable. The removal of the obstruction is the only change that needed to occur. The practitioner who applies the forgiveness equation completely, who locates the specific charge with the diagnostic precision Holmes specified, who applies the three-stage protocol with the structural authority of the thinker operating at first cause, and who confirms the cleared channel with the present tense certainty that the deep mind requires for its pattern confirmation, is not hoping for improvement in the obstructed area of their experience. They are receiving with the mathematical certainty of a law that does not deviate from its own consistency, the supply that was always available. They are receiving it not because they earned it through the difficulty of the forgiveness, not because they were spiritually prepared after a sufficient duration of practice, but because they removed the obstruction that was the only factor preventing its delivery, the equation does not earn the supply. It clears the channel. The supply was always there. It needed only the cleared channel to reach its destination. There is no version of this teaching that does not ultimately arrive at this single, irreducible, transformative recognition. What you have been seeking, you have always deserved. What you have been practicing toward, you have always been capable of receiving. What has seemed persistently withheld from you has never been withheld. It has been obstructed. There is a difference between withholding and obstruction that is not merely semantic. Withholding implies an agent who is choosing to deny, a source with preferences, a law with conditions, a God with favorites. Obstruction is entirely different. The source is not choosing. The law is not conditioning. The obstruction is in your channel, installed by your own consciousness in response to your own experience, and dissoluble by your own consciousness through the precise application of your own authority as the thinker. You are not at the mercy of a withholding source. You are the architect of a channel that you have the complete authority, and now the complete technical knowledge to clear. Apply the equation, step out of the way, and receive what the law has been attempting to deliver to you since before you began the practice. The teaching you have received in this space is not philosophy. It is not inspiration. It is a mechanical specification, a precise description of how a specific law operates, how a specific obstruction forms within it, how that obstruction is identified with the precision of a structural diagnosis, and how it is dissolved through the correct application of a specific three-stage operative equation. Every element of this specification has been stated with the directness and completeness that Holmes intended when he developed this teaching, not as a supplementary topic in the science of mind, but as the foundational diagnostic principle that explains why sincere, sustained, sophisticated metaphysical practice produces partial results in specific areas of a practitioner's experience. The explanation is not flattering to the part of us that prefers to believe we have already done everything correctly, but it is precise, and precision is more valuable than comfort to a practitioner who has been working seriously for years and still carries an unexplained obstruction in a specific area of the life they are building. The challenge before you now is specific, and it is available to you in this moment before you have moved on from this space to the next demand of your day. Identify the single area of your experience where persistent limitation has resisted every metaphysical technique you have applied. The one domain where the law seems to work everywhere except there. Hold it in mind not as a source of discouragement, but as a diagnostic object, the precise symptom of a specific structural obstruction, whose location you now have the knowledge to identify. Trace that limitation backward through its internal charge, not through its external history. What judgment, resentment, condemnation, or unforgiven energy is installed in your consciousness that corresponds precisely to the area that is blocked? And then, more demanding and more important than any other question, is there a version of yourself at the center of that charge? A past decision, a condemned quality, a privately maintained self-judgment that has been installed at the identity level and has been reducing the capacity of every channel simultaneously while appearing simply to be honest self-assessment. Name what you find. Name it with the precision the equation requires, not the story, not the emotional history, not the contextualizing narrative that makes the charge easier to hold. The specific judgment, the specific person or circumstance or version of yourself at the center of it, the specific belief about what that charge has permanently established as true about your access to the area of experience it corresponds to. Then apply the equation, once, completely, with the full authority of the thinker, operating at the level of first cause. Release the charge without reservation. Withdraw every condemning thought, every resentful charge, every unforgiven energy from the precise location in your consciousness where the crystallization has been maintained. State the cleared channel as a present tense structural fact, and confirm the flow of the law through the previously blocked area with the certainty of a practitioner who has just performed a precise structural operation, not hoped for a spiritual experience, not requested a divine intervention, but cleared a specific channel in their own deep mind by the direct exercise of their own authority as the thinker. Do not wait for an emotional experience. The equation is not emotional, it is mechanical. The absence of dramatic feeling following its application is not evidence of incomplete result. It is the signature of a deep mind structural operation, which, like every structural change, occurs in the quiet architecture below the level where emotion registers. Act as though the channel is now clear, because the equation, correctly applied, has cleared it. Move through the domain of the now cleared area with the calm certainty of a practitioner who has removed a specific obstruction from a specific location in their own consciousness, and watch with the patient, certain attention of a scientist observing the consequence of a correctly executed experiment, as the supply that was always available begins to arrive through the channel that is now, for the first time in the duration of the obstruction, structurally capable of receiving it. If you are watching the next video recommended from this channel, you are already demonstrating the understanding that the law of accident is not the operative principle of your initiation. What follows in this laboratory builds on everything that has been established here. The next teaching in this curriculum addresses the specific mechanism by which the cleared channel must be actively maintained against the deep mind's pattern consistency tendency and the precise protocol Holmes developed for what he called the daily circuit inspection, the systematic, brief, precision practice that prevents new crystallizations from forming in the channels that the forgiveness equation has cleared. Do not miss it. Before you leave this space, there is one action that will seal this understanding more permanently in your deep mind than any note you could take or any review you could perform. Think of one moment in your own life, one specific, concrete moment, where this law was already operating, whether you understood it at the time or not. A moment when an unforgiven charge in a specific area of your experience was blocking a supply that you later somehow received, and that arrived with a completeness and immediacy that, in retrospect, corresponded precisely to a release or resolution that occurred in your consciousness around the time of its arrival. Write that moment in the comments below, not for this channel, for yourself. Write it as a statement of recognition. The specific channel, the specific charge, the specific supply that arrived when the obstruction lifted. Because the deep mind that can identify this law operating in the past has just acquired something more valuable than understanding. It has acquired the capacity to operate the law in the future with the certainty of a practitioner who has witnessed its consistency firsthand in their own experience at a specific moment in their own life. That recognition is not the beginning of hope. It is the beginning of mastery.